When you go to a massive theatrical production, there's this unspoken expectation of flawless magic.
Right, like you don't want to see the wires.
Exactly. You just sit in the dark, the lights come up, and you watch the actors deliver these perfect lines. It's clean, it's, totally seamless. You don't see the exhausted stagehands sprinting behind the curtain or the frantic director or like the sheer mechanical chaos holding all the heavy set pieces together.
Yeah, because we actively want to believe the world on the stage is the only thing that exists. I mean, the illusion is basically the entire point of the ticket price.
Right. But the truth is, that hidden machinery is what actually makes the magic possible in the first place. And today, we're looking way past the brightly lit stage of the absolute biggest sporting event on the planet, the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
Which is just a massive undertaking.
Oh, completely. And we are diving into a really eclectic stack of materials to get there. We've got conversational English language guides tracking how fans are talking about the games. We have incredibly detailed statistical match reports.
Some genuinely bizarre viral news phenomena, too.
Yes, very bizarre. And finally, a really candid first-person published account from The Guardian about the unseen realities of working in sports broadcasting.
And, by weaving these different perspectives together, we get a three-dimensional view of the tournament. We are moving from the macro logistics of an entire continent down to the micro level of a single match, and then finally right into the broadcasting booth itself.
Our mission today is to pull back that curtain. We want to understand what is really happening, not just the glossy, televised surface you see on the pitch, but in the stands and, crucially, behind the microphones. For you listening, I want you to think about how much of the beautiful game you actually see as a fan compared to the massive logistical, cultural, and industry-wide machinations operating just out of view. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the sheer unprecedented scale of this tournament.
Yes, scale is the defining characteristic here, because the 2026 tournament fundamentally rewrites the mechanical rules of what a World Cup even is. For decades, the global audience was accustomed to a highly concentrated 32-team format. But now, the infrastructure has been stretched to accommodate 48 teams.
Which is a huge jump.
It is. And that balloons the schedule to an astonishing 104 matches.
104 matches. And they aren't just playing in one neat little European country where a team can take a quick, 2-hour train ride between stadiums.
No, definitely not.
This tournament is co-hosted by 3 massive nations. You have the USA with 11 host cities, Mexico with 3, and Canada with 2.
And Canada, by the way, is stepping into the co-hosting role for the very first time.
Right. Meanwhile, Mexico is making history as the first country to host 3 World Cups, 1970, 1986, and now 2026. The famous Estadio Azteca in Mexico City is the first stadium on Earth to ever host matches in 3 separate tournaments.
Which is incredible. But you have to consider the physical toll that geographical footprint demands. A team isn't just managing their opponents out there, they are battling extreme atmospheric shifts.
Yeah, the travel alone is wild.
Exactly. You have squads traveling from the oxygen-thin high altitude of Mexico City, where the air is less dense, meaning the ball travels faster and players fatigue much quicker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then they go up to the freezing, damp conditions of Vancouver.
Yeah.
And then down to the absolute sweltering, humid heat of Miami.
It feels like trying to organize a highly sensitive, multinational touring circus.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Every single variable is shifting. The performers are millionaire athletes. The climate changes every single day. And if one single calculation is off, the failure is broadcast to billions of people instantly.
And the financial stakes backing this up are just as massive.
Yeah, the culmination of all this is set for July 19th at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, an arena with 82,500 seats. And there is a record-breaking $50 million in prize money on the line.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this structural expansion completely changes the underlying tactical nature of the tournament. It transforms it from a concentrated, month-long football festival into a sprawling, continent-wide endurance test.
Right, because of the sheer volume of games.
Exactly. Depth of squad becomes the defining factor. A coach cannot rely on a starting 11 to survive 104 matches across varying climates. Tactical flexibility and rotating players to manage physical burnout is now just as important as technical skill.
And that structural shift is actually changing how people talk about the sport entirely. One of our materials today is a conversational English guide from an educational show called Emma Talk.
Right. They track the vocabulary.
Yeah, they track the shifting vocabulary around the expanded tournament. Because 48 teams are involved, fans aren't just discussing the heavy favorites, the historical giants. They're using phrases like rooting for or backing smaller nations.
Because there's just so much more room for them now.
Exactly, and suddenly the cultural conversation is dominated by talk of underdogs and dark horses.
Well, the mechanism there is purely mathematical. When you expand the bracket to 48 teams, you inevitably invite nations that rarely get this global spotlight. You create an incredibly fertile ground for the unexpected.
The Cinderella stories.
It's exactly. For those Cinderella stories where an unknown team knocks out a giant, that vocabulary, dark horse, upset thriller, it becomes the universal language of the water cooler because the expanded format practically guarantees chaos.
But no matter how massive the logistics get or how much the vocabulary changes, the World Cup always boils down to those highly concentrated, hyper-pressurized moments on the pitch.
It always does.
Which brings us perfectly to the sweltering heat of Miami. Let's zoom all the way in from the macro logistics of North America down to one specific, intensely humid night at Hard Rock Stadium, Brazil versus Scotland.
That match is a perfect case study for the dual nature of this tournament. It's where absolute on-field tactical brilliance collides with completely absurd off-field cultural phenomena.
Oh, we'll get to the absurd stuff in a second, but on the pitch, it was a masterclass.
Oh, completely. It was a masterclass in dominant football. Brazil dismantled Scotland 3-0, finishing top of Group C with 7 points. They also secured a +6 goal difference.
Right, meaning they scored 6 more goals than they allowed across their matches.
Exactly. Which is the metric that allowed them to edge out Morocco for that top spot. Morocco had actually beat Haiti 4-2, but Brazil's goal difference put them ahead.
And, the numbers from this game are just staggering. Specifically, when you look at Vinicius Jr., he earned a 9.1 match rating.
Which is practically unheard of.
Right. For anyone unfamiliar with football metrics, match ratings are out of 10. And a 9.1 isn't just a good game. It represents absolute game-breaking dominance. He wasn't just scoring. He was completely dismantling the defensive line.
Yeah, he scored 2 goals, one early in the 7th minute and another deep in first half stoppage time.
45 plus 3, yeah.
And by finding the back of the net in that match, he cemented a very specific historical legacy. He became only the 5th Brazilian in history to score in all 3 group stage games.
Wow. Only the 5th.
Yeah, he is now sitting on a statistical list alongside absolute icons of the sport. We're talking Jairzinho, Romario, Ronaldo, and Rivaldo.
That is some serious company. He definitely didn't do it in a vacuum, though. The midfield mechanics were fascinating to read about. Bruno Guimaraes earned an 8.2 rating by essentially pulling the strings of the entire match.
He was everywhere.
I love watching a player like that because they don't always get the glory of the goal, but they dictate the entire tempo, drawing in defenders, creating these impossible passing lanes, which resulted in his 2 crucial assists. Matheus Cunha slotted in the 3rd goal.
And we also saw Rayan step up.
Yeah, Rayan, who had to step in for an injured Rafinha, he set up the very first goal by aggressively pressing Scotland's defender, Scott McKenna, and immediately capitalizing on a costly mistake.
Scotland certainly attempted to disrupt that rhythm, though. Scott McTominay actually found an opening and had a powerful close-range header. But Alisson brilliantly saved it. He earned a 6.6 rating for his efforts. But the sheer mechanical quality of the Brazilian squad was just overwhelming.
Yeah, it really was. But I remember the energy in the stadium shifting completely in the 76th minute. It was the emotional peak of the entire group stage when Neymar finally subbed in for Matheus Cunha. I lose track of these injury timelines because the news cycle moves so fast. How long had he actually been away from international play before that moment?
It was exactly 981 days.
981 days. Wow.
Yeah. He suffered a devastating ACL and meniscus injury back in October 2023 against Uruguay. So you are looking at nearly 3 years of grueling, agonizing physical rehabilitation just to step back onto a pitch at this level.
That's intense.
The stadium eruption wasn't just about a tactical substitution. It was a profound human milestone of resilience.
It's the kind of genuine cinematic sports moment you just can't script. Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because the media ecosystem surrounding this specific match went entirely off the rails.
Oh, completely off the rails.
Right. While Vinicius is making historical lists and Neymar is completing a 3-year physical redemption arc, a massive portion of the internet was utterly consumed by a woman named Ana Tercia da Silva Gonçalves, who goes by Vobahiana online.
Yeah, a self-described spiritualist who somehow managed to hijack the global narrative of the match.
Completely hijacked it. She claimed she had a profound vision that aliens were going to invade the pitch during that Brazil-Scotland match in Miami.
Just casually predicting an alien invasion at the World Cup.
Yeah. And she wasn't just predicting a flashing light in the sky. She claimed a literal mothership was going to arrive and abduct fans and players, specifically naming Vinicius and Neymar as the primary targets of this extraterrestrial kidnapping.
In any other era or surrounding any other event, that claim just remains a tiny, localized oddity. But the World Cup creates this hyperinflated attention economy. The global audience is so hungry for content, and social media algorithms are so primed for engagement that the story went massively viral. It generated countless memes. Even the official Miami International Airport account joined in, tweeting a joke about unusual aerial activity.
It makes me wonder about the psychology of modern fans, Does the media circus surrounding the World Cup actually need stories like an alien abduction because the physical reality of a player like Vinicius is already so out of this world? Do we just need a frictionless release valve for all that high-stakes pressure?
I think it highlights how modern sports consumption operates. The audience is no longer just consuming the 90 minutes of gameplay. They're consuming the endless conversation surrounding the game.
Right, the memes, the drama.
Exactly. Because a 981-day injury recovery requires empathy, historical context, and a deep understanding of human physiology to truly appreciate. An alien abduction meme, however, requires zero context. It is instant entertainment. On a social media feed, the profound human struggle and the absurd alien joke occupy the exact same visual space and level of importance.
It's fascinating who gets to shape the story of a match. You have spiritualists going viral on Twitter, dictating the conversation for millions. But then you have the actual professionals sitting in the broadcasting booths, actively delivering the game to your television. And their reality is entirely different from the memes or the magic on the pitch.
Which leads us to the final piece of our deep dive today.
Yes, so we have a very candid published account from The Guardian. It's written by Rebecca Adams, who's a sports broadcaster with a 16-year career. We're looking at this strictly as her reported lived experience, but looking at the industry through her eyes gives us a totally different angle on what it takes to get this broadcast on air, contrasting the glossy public product with the hidden structural battles behind the scenes.
Right, because the surface-level corporate narrative is almost always focused on visible progress. We see a female-led Olympics team on the BBC, or more women working pitchside at the men's Euros.
Right, the stuff you can put on a billboard.
Exactly. But Adams details how the microaggressions and underlying bias haven't disappeared. They have simply evolved into more insidious forms.
She provides some highly specific anecdotes that expose those mechanics. For instance, she was preparing to anchor a sports program in the Middle East. Operating as a meticulous journalist, she called her producer ahead of time to understand the intricacies of the coverage. She asked what specialist knowledge she would need to effectively guide her expert analysts through the broadcast.
A standard journalistic question.
Totally standard, but the producer's response is honestly hard to fathom. He dismissively told her, "The channel don't care if you don't know what you're talking about as long as you look glamorous."
Oh, wow.
Right. A producer actually said that out loud to a professional with a decade and a half of experience. She notes quite powerfully in her article that she is a journalist, not a beauty pageant contestant.
It really reveals the historical baggage of sports media, where the aesthetic presentation of women was valued over their analytical capability. And she shares another incident back in the UK that reinforces this exact mindset.
Oh, the one in the office.
Yeah. She is at her desk, actively prepping her scripts at a major international broadcaster. A male colleague from another program walks into the shared space, looks around, and asks the room, "I suppose he's in the studio, is he?" Searching for the sports presenter.
He just assumed by default that the sports presenter had to be a man.
Exactly. And her response was absolutely brilliant. She just swiveled around in her chair and calmly stated, "She is here."
I love that. But that assumption stems from a constant, exhausting double standard that Adams details. She writes about how she is frequently asked by fans, and even her male contemporaries, if she played the sport professionally.
Right, and the underlying mechanism of that question is a demand for justification. It implies her knowledge must be validated by physical participation.
Exactly. Men in the industry simply do not face that same hurdle. No one asks a male commentator to present his professional playing credentials before he's allowed to analyze a tactical substitution or a defensive formation.
They're just assumed to be experts.
Right.
Adams also tackles the tired argument that women shouldn't cover men's football because it's somehow a completely different game.
She dismantles that argument with a brilliant comparison, actually. She points out that men's and women's football share the exact same tactical rules, dimensions, and mechanics. If you want a completely different sport, she says, go watch kabaddi.
Kabaddi. Right.
Yeah, for those unfamiliar, kabaddi is essentially a highly strategic, full-contact wrestling and tagging sport native to India. It relies entirely on physical grappling and breath control, with absolutely zero mechanical overlap with football. Her point is that football is football, regardless of who is kicking the ball.
And this hidden structural battle constantly spills out into the public sphere through things like YouTube comments, which she notes are wildly polarized. On one video, she'll get comments from fans demanding she be sacked because she's a pain to hear speak. Right next to that, she receives incredibly backhanded compliments from people saying they are pleasantly surprised by this female commentator. This raises an important question, really, about the nature of how we evaluate talent in broadcasting itself. Because unlike almost every other profession, there is a distinct lack of objective metrics.
Right.
A corporate salesperson can point to their quarterly revenue figures. A surgeon can point to their patient survival rates. But a broadcaster is judged entirely subjectively.
So what does this all mean? It's like celebrating a few female faces on TV while ignoring these microaggressions. It's like putting a fresh coat of paint on a house with a crumbling foundation. You're trapped in an algorithmic echo chamber, but built entirely out of human assumptions.
Exactly. In an environment where everything is judged on a subjective feeling or a specific vibe, the industry becomes incredibly susceptible to subconscious bias. If a hiring manager just feels a male voice inherently possesses more gravitas for a high-stakes match, how do you fight a feeling with data? No, you can't. That lack of objective measurement makes it exceptionally difficult to build a true meritocracy. It ensures the battle for respect is fought in the margins every single day, long before the red light on the camera ever turns on.
And that brings our exploration full circle today. We started about looking at the staggering macro logistics of a 104-match, 48-team, continent-spanning tournament. The sheer physical reality of moving athletes across extreme climates and navigating the complex orbital mechanics of a three-nation event.
Yeah, and then we zoomed in on the pitch in Miami, witnessing the undeniable tactical magic of Vinicius Jr. dismantling a defense and the profound emotional weight of Neymar's 981-day return.
Right, and we saw how quickly the internet can overlay that reality with the absolute absurdity of a spiritualist's viral dream about alien motherships.
And finally, we peeled back the deepest layer to look inside the broadcasting booth itself, exploring the hidden, highly subjective battles fought by the women who are actually translating and delivering this global spectacle into our living rooms.
The overarching takeaway here is that the World Cup isn't just one monolithic event. It is thousands of intersecting realities operating at vastly different scales, and they're only visible if you take the time to look past the surface.
Yeah. That hidden machinery changes the way you consume the event entirely.
It really does. For you listening, the next time you find yourself glued to the screen, completely captivated by a thriller of a match, I challenge you to do something slightly different. Pay attention not just to the brilliant footwork of the players on the pitch, but actively listen to the voices delivering the narrative of that game. Consider the invisible hurdles and the systemic assumptions those voices may have overcome just to get to that microphone.
It's a completely different game when you look at it that way.
It really is. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, connecting the two very different halves of our deep dive today. Imagine a slightly altered scenario in Miami. If a female sports broadcaster, instead of a viral internet spiritualist, had been the one to publicly share a quirky dream about aliens abducting Neymar, how would the public have reacted? Would it have been embraced as a funny, harmless, viral meme by the fans? Or would it have been instantly weaponized by online commenters as the ultimate, undeniable proof that women don't understand the sport?
Wow. The exact same message, delivered by a different messenger.
Because in a global theater built entirely on illusions, the voice delivering the story almost always changes how we receive the reality. We'll see you next time.